Rick Redniss is principal planner and former president of Redniss Mead. They are a design firm based in Stamford. They work throughout Fairfield County, residential, commercial, retail, industrial, educational, religious, government, and cultural projects, waterfronts, parks, open space, and their impact on Westport is substantial, which we'll talk about today. So, Rick Redniss, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So before we get into what you do, something about your background intrigued me. You didn't always work in land use. You spent 6 years teaching elementary school in Larchmont.
Correct.
So how do you go from elementary, first graders to land use?
So I was teaching. First of all, teaching was my first love. That's what I wanted to do. And I started doing it in Larchmont. Started with fourth grade, then went to fifth, then went to sixth. I had some of the kids 3 years. We just had a reunion last year, 50 years after the first sixth grade graduating class, and 22 kids came to my house. It was great, a great experience.
And they're about the same age as you are.
They some of them are retired. Some of my first students are retired. It's hysterical. But while I was teaching there, I met Paul Davidoff, who was the godfather of inclusionary zoning, and he had also started a planning department at Hunter College. So I ended up just getting to know Paul, working with, they had a school within a school program, and I met some very interesting people, and it kind of led me into planning, and I went and got a second master's degree in urban planning while I was teaching. Yeah, it was a great experience.
And in terms of planning, in Westport, you've worked on a wide variety. You've done affordable housing, like Hidden Brook and Sasko Creek and Hales Court. You've done condos like the Mill on Richmondville, commercial spaces like the Clubhouse, special needs housing on Riverside Avenue. So how do you decide what to work on and how do you sort of go about planning all these different projects?
So sometimes, many times, most times, the projects kind of come to me. Someone is trying to do something. Many times it's a little outside the box, and they want a little help on how do we get this done? This is a good idea. So first of all, I have to believe in it, that it's a good idea. So if I do, I try to approach it, which is how would I do it for myself, and what's the right way to do it? And sometimes that can be a unique sort of regulation, and sometimes it can be something that is setting a tone for other things to come, because it's a good idea that could be replicated. It's not that unique, and it's a little bit better mousetrap in my opinion. So that's how it usually starts. I actually started back in 99, maybe 2000. I was asked to come to Westport to help with affordable housing. I had been on the governor's task force to look at 830G, which was 10 years old at the time, and say, what's going on? How's it doing? What should be done? And that's when we came up with the moratoria system, because it was quite obvious that most towns were never going to reach 10%. So it's like, why try? And so when we created the moratoria system, when you get points for trying, and then you can stave off a hostile application, then towns started to take notice, Westport being one of them. Mm-hmm. And so when the first moratoria was achieved in town, I had the great fortune of working on 7 out of the 10 that qualified for that moratoria.
You talk about thinking outside the box and interesting, exciting projects. Can you give a couple of examples and how they sort of took shape?
So, well, I mean, what I'm working on now is part of that. Well, you mentioned Richmondville. That's a great example. So here we have historic property, commercial property in a residential zone, a very tight and tight-knit residential zone. And the first meeting we had, and when they approached me to say, can you help us, get this approved, I said, oh, this is wonderful, Because also when you change from office to residential, it's such an improvement on everything that the town needs and wants. And again, in my opinion, because it doesn't have the peak hour traffic. Residential does not have the peak hour traffic that commercial does. The aesthetics were going to be improved. The contribution to inclusionary housing, which in that case was off-site, which became 136 Riverside, special needs.
That's the one right next to Saugatuck Hill.
Yes. And that's a great one to talk about, this whole Riverside experience. It's a puzzle to put together. And then we had neighbors. I mean, the first meeting we had, I always like to have meetings with neighbors early in the process. And I mean, the tar and feathers, they were ready, You want to do what? And there was a lot of hostility at that first meeting. And by the end, I think there was very little opposition. We made deals with neighbors to screen and fix and do things around that needed to be done. And it was just a great experience. So to me, that's the best when it's a puzzle like that and we can put all those pieces together. What we did with 136, to me, is one of the things I'm most proud about. And that was create special needs housing. Originally, Homes with Hope was in Richmondville. They were in the building, and they were paying rent. And 136 was for sale. The town was trying to sell the property. Riverside was for sale. Town wanted to sell it. And so I thought I was working at that point on the residence, 1141 Post Road, the residence.
That's senior housing.
Senior housing. And got a chance to write that zoning, and we created, again, an opportunity for off-site affordable housing. And I wanted them to buy 136 and to put housing on the top and the offices on the bottom. And then homes, for free, developer pays for everything. And then Homes with Hope would have had housing and would have had offices that they didn't have to pay for. Mm-hmm. And I've done that in other towns where the affordable housing providers, if you can help them save money and they can help more people, to me, that's good synergy. And it's not all housing per se, but it goes to the cause. And so that didn't work out. They went with another bidder on the property, which didn't happen. And so when it came back on, I said, we really should try again with 136. Only this time, I thought it would be better not to sell. Okay? We don't make any more land. I think towns are better off leveraging their property than selling their property. So we did a 49-year lease. So it qualified for 830G. And all the improvements were done by the Richmondville developers. And Ableist was able to go in, special needs, staff, all renovated. The building's beautiful, millions of dollars put into it. And they get to stay there for free for 49 years.
5 special needs.
I think it was 4 special needs and a staff person to see. And I learned so much about special needs. And then it filled up immediately. It has 4 Staples graduates. Wow. It is just a wonderful, wonderful asset to the town. And obviously we're trying to replicate it again.
So what are you working on now? I know you got several irons in the fire.
Yeah. Well, one of them relates to special needs. We've been trying for over 18 months to replicate what we did at 136 at 3 George Street.
George Street is off of South Maple.
Correct. Longer story involved in that, but that's the short story. We get an opportunity to do it again. They have a waiting list. It's needed, millions of dollars gets put into property to upgrade it. It's just everything good.
Other projects.
That's other projects. So I am helping Spinnaker with their 606 Riverside, the old Hamlet site.
The dry cleaner.
The dry cleaner part, right? So I get to work with Spinnaker, which is, to me, the perfect fit for this in Westport at this time.
Well, what makes it a perfect fit?
Well, Clay Fowler is one of my best friends. Been working together for, close to 50 years. Our parents both worked together before that. He has been chairman of his planning board when he lived in Pound Ridge for 20 years. He's been the president of Housing Development Fund, which is dedicated to homeownership, primarily homeownership, affordable homeownership. He understands it. He's built a staff of great people working on it. And Binefield Architects, it's just the right mix. They build good quality. They are long-term holders, very rarely sell. So it's just the right fit. They know what they're doing in terms of TODs, in terms of
transit-oriented development.
Yes, and how to manage properties properly. And they're very, very smart. Clay is very, very smart, and his people are smart. And they will find a way to do it the best way it can get done at this time. So I think the fit is right.
Great. And you've got a few other post-road projects.
Yes. So we're working on the Humane Society, and that's been a really good experience. We met immediately with Whitney Glen, which is below and right next door, a senior community, dozens and dozens of people. And we worked together to say, what can we do? What needs to be done to protect them, to enhance their experience, and yet leverage and get the development done. And again, we got to work with Binefield Architects, and they're terrific. We love working with them. And came up with a pretty simple design that encourages underground parking and more open space. It's a rental project, inclusionary on-site affordable in this case, because it works for them because it's a rental. So we have that going right now, and that is almost concluded. Other things waiting in the wings to see what happens with the new state law and how the town reacts. There's a new provision that actually awards moratoria points for developments of 9 or fewer multifamily that does not have inclusionary housing. So it seems aimed at, we need more housing. And so if we can encourage more smaller projects, which fit in easier, and you're not supposed to use the word character, but everybody does. But it's easier to fit smaller projects into a variety of places than the larger ones. When what's happened with 830G is they upped the ante from when they started in terms of the percent of units that have to be affordable, the number of years that have to be affordable, and at what level of affordability. And every time they make it harder, they drive the density up to pay for it. Because, this is private sector doing public sector work, which, after the 60s, there was much more money put in. We got into the 70s, and still more money was going into housing. But starting with Reaganomics, funding was cut, 75, 80% of funding going into housing. So it's shifted to the private sector. And there was always this tension between developers, like they're the problem. They're providing the housing, but it's just a system that is a balancing act to get the private sector to do the public sector work. And the more they try to either discourage it or make it harder or make it more affordable or whatever to meet the need. The need is there. The need has been there. It'll always be there. It just drives up the density, and it leads to hostility and in many cases things that didn't need to be as large as it was.
So where in Westport would these smaller developments take place?
They can be in any commercial zone. That's another thing that the new regs does. You're supposed to have, your commercial zones are all supposed to allow residential. I remember we had these arguments when we were working on things like the Y I got to work on with Larry Wiseman. If you haven't had Larry in this seat, you got to get Larry. You got to get Larry to come sit here and talk, because he's a treasure for Westport. But, there are zones, there are downtown zones that don't allow housing. It just doesn't make any sense. So
you are very interested and involved in affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Where does Westport stand? I mean, when I say Westport, residents, officials, and all that. And I mean, it's such a difficult topic.
Yeah.
But I know you're very involved in it.
It is difficult because it's got all of the elements. When we were working on Hales Court, for example, so Hales Court, we doubled the density. But you know what Hales Court was like and what it's become. It
was run down, and now it's a gem.
It's a gem. And yes, the density doubled, but it was only an extra 30-something units. It was not a lot. And when you have the land, you have to take advantage of that in a town like Westport if you want to have your fair share of affordable housing in your community. And I remember the famous quote was, "We don't want crack addicts from Bridgeport." That's the mindset. And I understand people's thoughts on that. I remember Father Panic Village. I remember there's a lot of post and pre-World War II housing that was just not good housing, not maintained correctly. It was bad examples that people have in their mind of what affordable housing is. But when they learn and they see who actually gets to live in those and who qualifies, and it's them. It's just like real people. It can be school teachers, it can be people that work in the food shops, it can be restaurant people. There's a wide range. It can be a lot of this is senior, not senior. Well, yes, some of it is definitely seniors and trying to stay in the community. Single women with children, people that can't afford, the so-called market rate housing, and so affordability goes to that. The other issue that comes up is because of fair housing laws, people think that, these are going to be people from Bridgeport or Norwalk. They're not going to be Westport people. And that is true to an extent, but if you go back and look at with the housing authority, with any of the affordability, it seems that a significant portion of those people that occupy the units have a Westport connection. They have a Westport connection. I've written zoning and wrote zoning in other towns where we gave a priority for that, but then someone challenged that and said you can't do that. So we had to change those regulations because if every town was doing their thing, then it would balance out. But because some towns don't do any, then it's a challenge.
And does Westport do enough?
Westport, Westport is, to me, a leader in what it's been able to accomplish and what they've agreed to do in so many different applications. It's not easy. It's a challenge, and I think right now there seems to be sometimes people are more concerned about the developer than the development. They're more concerned that somehow the developer is getting away with something instead of looking at what's being accomplished. To me, it's not about the developer or the development. It's what's the result, what's the benefit to the community. That should be the litmus test.
You've worked with a lot of first select persons.
Mm-hmm.
Diane Farrell,
Mm-hmm.
Gordon Josloff, Jim Marpy, Jen Tooker, Kevin Christie. Do they share your vision?
I think in some ways they do. I remember when we were working on Linksweiler.
That's the house next to McDonald's.
Right. That is, again, town-owned, used for affordable housing. But if you're looking at land use and trying to take advantage of the land that you have, it's really underused. And so we had a plan working with the Housing Authority, and then there was some feedback. Some of the commissioners weren't quite ready, and so that application got pulled. The administration pulled the application. So I think people are willing to try and do things. And when we started working on special needs housing again, we were looking at town-owned property. And we were working with Jen and Pete Rakowitz, who we're sad to see is leaving. And we were trying to get special needs housing on town-owned land again. We were trying to work on that. And then that didn't work out. We looked at doing something on town-owned land with barons. And again, working with RPM Homes, looked at, can we renovate this building, rent it out? Because those buildings are not...
The golden
yes.
mansion,
yeah.
The barons.
So we have these opportunities, but they become political. If you step back and you said, should we allow buildings to just deteriorate and not be used, or not be used for what could be contributing to affordable housing, for moratoria points, for helping fight off the next 830G. To me, it's like, yeah, let's do it. But that isn't the real world.
Yeah. Just a couple more.
Sure.
This is great. You have a magic wand. You can create any kind of zoning or regulatory change that you want. What would it be?
Wow. I've never been given a magic wand before.
You get a lot with 06880.
Yeah. I guess one of the things I would do, because remember, these people are volunteers. They spend a lot of time and effort. Now, luckily, it's Zoom, so it's a little less stressful on people. You have a staff that's trying to cope with all these things going on and the changes coming at them. If I had a magic wand, I would want to speed up the process. I would just not take away from the dynamics of the process or the inclusionary nature of the process, but just it takes so much to deliver. And in Westport, where land is so expensive, every week can be $10, $15, $20,000 down the drain.
Yeah.
And so, and if we could just do things faster, not with any less scrutiny, but just faster, I guess that would be my first one.
All right. That's a great one.
Yeah.
One of the things I know you're proud of is a few years ago you changed the regulations from elderly to senior.
Yes.
What was that all about?
So, it's hard to remember because I'm a senior now, so it's hard to remember. But I was working on something, and it may have been with Gordon and Shelley, and working on writing affordable senior housing at Barron South. And the word elderly was in. I think that might have been where this came from. But I objected. I was only 58 at the time. And I objected to the word elderly. It had negative connotations, whereas senior, that's experience, So we changed that everywhere in the regs. Everywhere got changed. So. And now, of course, that was a long time ago.
There you go.
Yeah.
Last question. You drive around Westport.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it with eyes that other people might not see it with? And if so, what do you see when you drive around?
Well, I probably do see it with different eyes. What are the flashpoints that people don't like? They don't like change. Okay? They don't like traffic. They don't like height.
Density.
Density. So as I drive around, what I see is the built environment doesn't necessarily reflect those things. You can see 5 stories and think that it's horrible, and you can not even notice 5 stories. Or you can have 5 stories. You drive Riverside. So I came down, I come off 17, wait for a light cycle to get through, and then go Riverside, and there are 5-story buildings like hanging right on the street. And so height is not an issue as long as it's done right, if it's set back. What is the pedestrian experience? That's really what we should be looking at. It's not the numbers. It's what's the feeling that you have? What do you see? So I guess that would be my short answer.
Sure. Rick Redniss, thank you for talking about land use, affordable housing, and for the 06880 podcast viewers, when you drive around town, look at Westport with Rick's eyes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for what you do. I mean, I feel so much more connected to Westport because I get up every day and I check out what you're talking about, what you're reporting about. So thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Rick.
it. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.